What would happen if I tried a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Emerald without ever using a Pokemon Center or any healing items whatsoever? Universal healthcare? Banned. Healing with potions? Banned. Restoring Pokemon by putting them in a digital prison? Banned. Relying on the kindness of an old lady so that you can have just a moment's rest from your endless journey to become Pokemon champion? Banned. The only way I'll be allowed to heal my Pokemon in any way is at the 3-story mandated auto heals and with the limited use of healing moves if my Pokemon happen to get them. Since this is a Nuzlocke, if a Pokemon faints, it's dead forever, and I can only catch the first Pokemon I find on each route. Every encounter matters, every power point is precious, and every tick of HP permanently brings my Pokemon closer and closer to tragic death. Let's get started. The first thing I have to do is save Professor Birch from a feral Zigzagoon. In doing so, I get to pick my starter, and being the master Nuzlocker with 2020 foresight that I am, I pick Mudkip so I'll have a guaranteed ground type to deal with Watson's electric types, often considered one of the hardest third gym leaders in the franchise and a massive wall for Nuzlockes in Pokemon Emerald. Mudkip taking damage during the fight with Zigzagoon isn't a problem since one of the 3-story mandated auto heals happens immediately after this fight. So as we head off on our health careless adventure, Arizona the Mudkip is at full HP. But I soon come to a devastating realization. By training up Arizona to get to a level where he can comfortably take out my rival's Trico, I have to face off against wild Pokemon, and even by only fighting Wurmples, we start racking up damage far quicker than we rack up levels. And without healing, these kinds of wounds, they last and they last. Unless I get really lucky and the Wurmples only ever go for String Shot, there's no way Arizona will have enough HP to get out of the early game. So it's time for a reset and a color change. In attempt 2, I switch from Mudkip to Trico, because sometimes trying something new is the best option. For example, if you're sick and tired of boring web browsers, then you should check out the sponsor of this video, Opera GX, a sleek new web browser with countless features designed to be perfect for gamers. Unlike most web browsers that hog PC resources, Opera GX uses the GX control feature to let you effortlessly use your browser without hurting your gaming performance. With GX Corner, you can stay up to date on everything in the gaming world, including getting access to breaking news, free games, and the best deals on new releases, all in one easily accessible place. It's like being subscribed to those retro gaming magazines, but for free. And speaking of retro gaming, do you ever miss out on the feeling of gaming at an arcade? You ever think about the first time you held a Game Boy back when the world was just a little less blah? Well, then you'll love GX mods, which offer inventive ways to customize the Opera GX browser. For example, this is the GX Boy mod, designed to feel like you're browsing the World Wide Web of the 90s. GX mods can play unique background music, they can change the sounds of typing on the keyboard or opening and closing tabs, they can change the themes and colors of your browser, and even introduce dedicated wallpaper. Individual modifications can be enabled and disabled with ease in the mods menu, and if you're ever bored of your current mod, you can visit the GX store for so many more. The best part is that Opera GX is completely free to download. So if you're interested in a fully customizable browser perfect for getting the most out of your gaming setup, use my link below to download Opera GX today. Thanks so much to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to the challenge. When it comes to standard Nuzlockes, Trico is easily the worst of the 3 Hoenn starters, but Arizona 2.0 does have one very useful tech that Mudfish and Fire Duck don't: Absorb. While that sweet 20 base power ain't much to write home about, Absorb lets Arizona 2.0 heal back some HP anytime he starts getting too low. Who needs Nurse Joy when you can stay alive by sucking the life force of innocent wild Pokemon? By training on Wingles, which only know Growl and Water Gun at this level, I can make sure that I don't need to use too many Absorbs, since one of the most difficult parts of this challenge will be PP management. Since I can't heal if the power points of a move drop to 0, that's the end of it. Once Arizona uses Absorb 20 times, no more healing, so I gotta be careful. But at the very least, I can get to a level high enough to beat down Maze Torchic without taking too much damage. And after getting Pokeballs, I can recover back some HP by taking out the Poochyena owned by the only mandatory trainer on Route 102. Oh, and with Pokeballs, I can of course start catching some more encounters. As with most things in this challenge, catching Pokemon is pretty tricky. The longer I stay in, the more damage my Pokemon takes. So it behooves me to catch these suckers as quickly as possible. Good thing they call me One Ball HG. Now, I have made one small exception to the no healing rule, and it has to do with the PC system. Immediately after catching a Pokemon, I'm allowed to deposit them in the PC, effectively getting them to a clean slate at the very start of their tenure on the team. But that's it. If a Pokemon ever takes damage or loses PP, then it's not allowed back in the box because that would count as healing, which means that I have to be very careful about managing my party of 6 and deciding when to remove Pokemon from the box. Anyways, after catching a Zigzagoon from Route 103 and a Wurmple from Route 102, I have to fight the Team Aqua Grunt in Petalburg Woods. His Poochyena is a bit of a pain in the ass since he spams Sand Attack, which is very bad for PP management, but with a little bit of luck we break through without losing too many power points. Another boon of picking Trico as my starter is that he can learn Bullet Seed by TM on the other side of Petalburg Woods. If it comes down to it, we can also teach him Cut, but the 30 PP from Bullet Seed should be more than enough to get us through the next part of the game. I decided to delay a few encounters here for reasons I no longer remember, but I do make the trek to Rustturf Tunnel to catch a Whismur, and then on Route 116 I catch a Tailo. That's an incredible pickup for Brawly. But on the way back to Rustboro, I accidentally run into an optional trainer with a Shroomish. In this challenge, Shroomish is one of the Horsemen of the Apocalypse because they know Stun Spore and also have the ability Effect Spore, making it incredibly difficult to take them out without getting permanently paralyzed. I end up barely taking down this Shroomish thanks to Missouri the Wurmple getting a lucky poison with Poison Sting, but it does come at the expense of a permanent paralysis. Or it would if I wasn't able to evolve Missouri into a Silcoon with the ability Shed Skin. A few turns against a harmless Magikarp, and her paralysis is cured. But yeah, we gotta be very careful when it comes to potential status conditions. After a bit of purposeful training, it's time for Arizona to face down against the first gym leader Roxanne. Absorb against her 2 lead Geodudes ensures that Arizona's at full HP as Roxanne's ace Nose Pass comes out. We outspeed, so with a few high rolls from Bullet Seed, we should have this one wrapped up. The first one lands for a respectable 3 hits before we have to tank a Rock Tomb. That instantly gets a critical hit. Well, given that Nose Pass has an Oran Berry, that about does it for attempt 2. We can outspeed to hit another Bullet Seed, but since it just hits 2 times this time, a second Rock Tomb comes out, kills Arizona, and forces me back to square one. We can skip these next few attempts and jump straight ahead to attempt 7. Given that this is a Nuzlocke, my encounters are a bit different, though you'd be surprised at how many more or less guaranteed encounters there are in this game. The main difference between attempt 2 and attempt 7 here is that I catch a Wingull named California on Route 103 and a Nincada named Nevada on Route 116. That means no Tailo, but a Nincada is a ground type, which might actually be useful for Watson. And with Leech Life, he can even gain back some HP from time to time. Oh, and don't worry, even in a challenge like this, I won't be using Shedinja. In attempt 7, Arizona doesn't get instantly crit by Nose Pass, so he's able to take her down with a few lucky rolls from Bullet Seed. That means that after more than 2 pages worth of script, we've finally made it past the very first gym leader. And what better way to celebrate than by letting Arizona evolve into the coolest middle stage starter of all time, Grovyle. But our celebration is short-lived because in a brutal twist of fate, Arizona gets poisoned by an optional trainer's Wurmple. That's the kiss of death, because from here on out, every step I take brings Arizona closer and closer to death, and I have no one to blame but myself. It seems tragically hopeless until I realize that the second of 3 story-mandated auto-heals is just 1 plot point away. If I can get to Rustturf Tunnel, beat the Team Aqua Grunt that kidnapped Pico the Wingull, and make it back to the weeniest Devoncore employee, then Daddy Stone will heal my Pokemon and save Arizona's life. Fortunately, Texas the Whismur is able to take care of the Aqua Grunt's Poochyena, but with Arizona at 13 HP, that gives me just 51 steps before he's dead, which is not nearly enough to make it back. But there's still hope. By getting back to the grass on Route 116, I can carefully move back and forth in the same patch of grass until I find an encounter. Staying in the same patch of grass doesn't cause poison damage to build up, so it's safe for me to do this until I find the right encounter, a Poochyena. Somehow I find 3 Talos before that, but once I find a mangy little mutt, I can hit him with an Overgrow boosted Absorb for the one-shot, giving me enough HP to safely make it back to Rustboro. By the skin of our teeth, Arizona survives, because Daddy Stone always provides. I'll be your delivery boy in this life and the next, my king. A full team heal also means that I can drop a few Pokemon off in the box to free up room in my party, since doing so no longer counts as healing. From here, it's off to Granite Cave where I can catch a Makuhita named Wisconsin. I was desperately hoping for a Geodude, but Makuhita is probably the next best choice. After delivering Daddy Stone's letter to his ungrateful son, I pay him a visit back at Devancore to get the XP share, which should make training my weaker Pokemon much easier. Prior to this, I was able to safely train up against Wild Silcoon and Cascoon in Petalburg Woods since they only know Harden, but after a while, the minimal experience isn't worth the massive waste of PP. With the XP share, however, I can now comfortably evolve Wyoming the Silcoon into a Beautifly. And believe it or not, this little lady is able to completely sweep Brawly's Pokemon. Her bug flying typing makes her quad resistant to fighting type attacks, and even though she's not the strongest Pokemon in the world, super effective gusts hit hard enough. One of my favorite parts of Nuzlocking is learning to appreciate undervalued Pokemon. If you like watching Nuzlocks, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really does help out a ton, and even if you think you're already subscribed, you might not be. Anyways, a few turns later, the battle is won, and our adventure continues full steam ahead. North of Slateport City on Route 110, I catch an Electrike named Iowa. It does come at the expense of Wyoming getting paralyzed by a Thunder Wave, but that's actually fine, because after beating the Team Aqua Grunts in the Slateport City Museum, my team gets auto-healed for the third time. Once again, this means I can box some Pokemon to cycle out the team. But that's the last free heal in the entire game. From here on out, I'm on my own. No more free handouts. Which is especially scary because next up is what I'm dubbing Paralysis Alley. Before making it to Mauville City, I have to navigate through Route 110, which features mandatory battles against Pokefans Isabelle and Caleb, both of which have a Plusle and Minun that love to spam Thunder Wave. There's also an optional trainer with an Electrike with Thunder Wave and Static, who I'm bound to run into at some point, a pretty scary battle against my rival May, and then another mandatory battle against a Triathlete with a Thunder Shocking Magnemity. Without a ground type, the odds of making it to Mauville paralysis free are slim to none. Now, I do have a ground type Pokemon, but Nevada is a tad too weak to take care of two sets of Plusle and Minun all by himself, especially since they all have Oran Berries. Ultimately, Wyoming has to come in and save the day, but she does get permanently paralyzed as a result. That's incredibly disappointing given that with Morning Sun and Absorb, she's really good at keeping herself at full HP. The rival fight is next, and though she doesn't have a way to paralyze us, her Combusken is not very fun to deal with. Her lead Wingull is slaughtered by Arizona, who manages to land the world's first ever unassisted 5-hit Bullet Seed. Somebody alert the press because we've got a legend on our hands. With Combusken out second, it's off to California, though she's a bit underleveled. Still, we manage to outspeed and do decent damage to Combusken with Water Gun. But after 2 hits to bring him down into the yellow, the Mother Clucker lands a critical hit Ember, killing California for the very first death of Attempt 7. You hate to see it, but this challenge is no place for sentimentality. Arizona comes in and tries to snipe off Combusken with a quick attack. He comes frustratingly short, but at the very least a blaze-boosted Ember misses out on the one-shot. One last quick attack takes out Combusken, and then Wyoming, still paralyzed, comes out to kill Maze Lombre with a gust, winning us the battle. But once again, victory is short-lived because against that stupid mandatory triathlete, Arizona gets paralyzed by a Thunder Shock from Magnemite, which just sucks. We're really gonna need all hands on deck for the fight against Watson, and things are starting to look bleak. Fortunately, getting to Mauville City finally grants me access to one of the most important resources in the game, the Daycare Center. In Generation 3, Pokemon in the Daycare Center gain 1 experience point for every step you take. This means that I can freely level up my Pokemon without wasting any precious power points. Now, putting Pokemon in the Daycare does heal them, so much like with the PC system, I'll only be allowed to use the Daycare on Pokemon that haven't taken any damage or lost any PP. So, Arizona, Wyoming, and Nevada are all stuck leveling up in the traditional way. But Pokemon like Texas the Whismur, Wisconsin the Makuhita, and Arkansas the Poochyena are fair game. Since Pokemon in the Daycare Center auto-learn new moves and don't evolve, I just have to make sure to take them out from time to time, slap on an EXP share, and use my already damaged Pokemon to level them up naturally. It requires a bit of patience and a decent amount of money, but eventually we've got a pretty formidable team, and Watson is starting to look potentially doable. Sadly, in a freak training accident, Arizona dies to a high roll arm thrust from a Makuhita, marking the second death of the run. Losing a starter is always a bummer, but like I said, this challenge is no place for sentimentality. Arizona's death opens a spot up for the oddish named Hawaii that I caught on Route 117, and once she evolves into Gloom, it's time to face off against the run-ender Watson. The Jolly Gentleman leads with Voltorb, and I lead with Arkansas to get off and intimidate. Then I immediately switch to Nevada on a Shockwave. This should lock Voltorb into Rollout or cause them to go boom. Either way, it's off to Texas. Since Voltorb opts for Rollout, we can just retaliate with a few pounds until they go down. I was hoping that Texas might be the first Loudred to ever make it past Watson, but now it's looking unlikely. As Electrike comes in second, I go for a Pound. Electrike outspeeds to get off a Howl, but then Pound does a massive amount of damage, though it does trigger Static. Why wouldn't it? A Shockwave on the next turn leaves Texas with 6 HP, but then he gets fully paralyzed. Why wouldn't he? Since Texas is now at death's door, there's no point in doing anything other than sacrificing him for a free switch to Wisconsin. With the big boy out, I can snipe off Electrike with a Fake Out, which fortunately doesn't trigger Static for a second time. That brings in Magneton third, who of course takes the opportunity to hit us with a Thunder Wave. Wisconsin is Thick Fat instead of Guts, so we don't get an attack boost from that, but Vital Throw is still enough for a one-shot. That means that Watson is just down to his Manectric. Wisconsin is strong enough to tank a few Shockwaves, but he only needs to tank one, because a lucky critical hit Vital Throw comes out on the very next turn for a clean one-shot, winning us the battle. In the grand scheme of things, that went pretty darn well. And it means that we've officially made it to the mid-game, where about half a dozen new encounters await. As soon as I get to Route 111, a Geodude pops out of one of the boulders blocking my path. Could have used this guy a few minutes ago, but Montana will be useful for the next few gyms as well. I catch a Coughing in Fiery Path, a Numel on Route 112, and a Spinda on Route 113. Along the way, I run into a fella who gives me the TM for Secret Power. This is another amazing resource to have because I can now go back to Slateport and purchase multiple Secret Power and Hidden Power TMs. Since virtually every Pokemon can learn both Secret Power and Hidden Power, I now have unlimited PP simply by relearning those two moves on top of each other over and over again. Of course, this is limited by my money, which is in pretty short supply after getting run dry by the Daycare Center, but it's good to have in my back pocket. I accidentally kill the Lombre that would have been my encounter on Route 114, and I catch a Zubat in Meteor Falls. I also went back and used an Old Rod to fish up a Magikarp and a Tentacruel from Dewford Town and Route 107 respectively. So next up is the fight against Maxie on top of Mount Chimney, but Hawaii and Arkansas make quick work of him. Hawaii puts his lead Mightyena to sleep with a Sleep Powder, Arkansas sets up a few Howls, and then sweeps through Maxie's 3 Pokemon with Strain. Camerupt actually survives one hit, but fortunately only hits a soft Magnitude 5. That sucker is so volatile with Magnitude. He can be a walk in the park, or he can be an absolute monster. I definitely got a little lucky there. On the Ravage path, I catch a Machop who will be incredibly useful for Norman's normal types. But first is the fight against Flannery's fire types in Lava Ridge Town, and it's here where I have to make the hard decision to let Wyoming go. I need to make room on the team, and she's the obvious answer. She's not dying, but by putting her in the box and healing her, I'm effectively retiring her for the rest of the run, never to be seen again. Thank you for your service, sweet girl. Enjoy your rest. Montana the Graveler is Wyoming's replacement as we go to face off against Flannery, but with any luck we won't need her. Illinois the Tentacool knows Bubble Beam, which he can use to one-shot Flannery's first 3 Pokemon. They're almost never an issue. Her ace Torkoal, however, absolutely is. Bubble Beam doesn't even do 50% as she sets up a sunny day. There's not much I can do other than just keep plugging away with Bubble Beam and hope that Illinois pulls through. That hope is quite short-lived though, as Torkoal's first Body Slam paralyzes my little squid. And even though we still outspeed, Illinois gets fully paralyzed on the next turn, so she goes down to a second Body Slam. Rough. Well, time to earn your keep, Montana. Ideally, she just kills Torkoal with a high roll Magnitude, but she, of course, does not. At the very least, Torkoal just opts for Body Slam, which doesn't paralyze, and even though Flannery heals, and we start off with a freaking Magnitude 4, Montana is able to put away Torkoal a few turns later without taking too much damage. So that's badge number 4 in the books. It's a pretty quick trip back to Petalburg City for the 5th gym battle, but during some training along the way, Nevada gets poisoned. And without any more auto heals, it's pointless to keep him on the team, so like Wyoming before him, he too retires to the box right before succumbing to death. Honestly, I was probably going to retire him anyways so that we can bring in a few new Pokemon onto the team to help out with Norman. The first is New York the Spinda, who's my lead into my father's Spinda. With Return, she's able to hit her doppelganger hard before Norman flubs by going for Teeter Dance. You literally have a Spinda, Dad. You really should know that that wouldn't work. Norman wastes a Hyper Potion here, so as Spinda goes down to a critical hit Return, I'm feeling pretty great. Slacking comes in second, so I switch to Montana on a counter. And then I'm free to go for Dig. Since I'm slower than Slacking, I'll be above ground on his loafing turns and safely underground on his attacking turns. This is foolproof. Yeah, that one's on me. I kind of feel like an idiot for not thinking that through a bit more. And with that, this just went from a very breezy battle to an absolute disaster. Especially because Nebraska isn't able to kill Slacking either. A second counter kills her, effectively sealing my fate. New York is actually able to kill Slacking, but my team doesn't stand a chance against Vigoroth. In fact, he outspeeds and kills my remaining 4 Pokemon with Slash. Actually, Hawaii does survive 1 Slash, but it doesn't matter because Vigoroth has Vital Spirit, so Sleep Powder fails. You'd think I would have remembered that, but I guess not. A few Facades and Slashes later, and Norman has ruthlessly snuffed out attempt number 7. What a dick. I really wish Daddy Stone was my father instead. You know, I gotta say I'm a little stunned to be resetting here, but with 7 attempts worth of experience, I've got the early game pretty well mapped out. In attempt 8, I managed to pick up a Tailo from Petalburg Woods, so he's able to mostly take care of Brawly, though he does come up just shy of KOing Makuhita, and as a result pays the ultimate price. But Wyoming 8.0, now a Dustox, is able to finish things off with a few confusions. Since I once again caught a Makuhita in Granite Cave, the fight against Watson is pretty similar to what happened in attempt 7, though this time Texas the Whismer actually dies before the battle in a training accident. The new and improved Wisconsin also has the ability Guts instead of Thick Fat, so his paralysis might actually be a blessing in disguise. I also managed to catch an Azumarill named Michigan from Route 104, but perhaps the most important encounter in the entire run is Kansas the Illumise from Route 117. See, Kansas can learn the move Wish, which can be used to heal my other teammates. It's only got 10 PP and doesn't fully heal them, so it's not like Kansas is a walking Pokécenter, but this is huge for Pokemon like Wisconsin and Michigan who don't have a way to heal themselves. Anyways, the first few mid-game encounters are largely the same. Against Maxie, it's more of a team effort this time around, but the end result is the same: a deathless victory. This gets me back to the fight against Flannery, but as you can see, my current team is more than a little weak to fire types. If Michigan goes down, that would be game over. So I gotta box someone. But since everyone has taken damage or used up PP, that means retiring one of them permanently. Unless I do something very cheeky. Arizona the Grovyle, who didn't die in this attempt by the way, is at full HP. So, by teaching him a bunch of useless TMs and HMs, I can get him to a point where all of his moves have full PP, and putting him in the box no longer counts as healing. Loopholes, baby. Gotta love them. Arizona will be back later, but for now, Florida the Tentacruel joins the team, ready for revenge against Flannery's fire types. Though this time around, I actually start with Michigan, since she's got slightly better special attack, and also the ability Thick Fat. Bubble Beams one-shot Numel and Slugma, but Flannery's Camerupt actually holds on with a Sliver, letting her get off in a Tract. Damn you, you sexy cow. I switch to Florida as Flannery heals. Another Bubble Beam again leaves her in the red, and this time Camerupt goes for Sunny Day. Flannery uses a second Hyper Potion as Bubble Beam does what appears to be 50%. So I go for a gamble that pays off as another Bubble Beam gets the KO. With 2 more turns of Harsh Sunlight, it's unlikely that Florida will be able to take on Torkoal all by herself, but gosh darn it, she's gonna try. A Sun-nerfed Bubble Beam does a bit of damage, and then Torkoal gets a critical hit with Body Slam for the immediate one-shot. This turtle really hates jellyfish, huh? Well, Michigan is bulky enough to be able to tank a few hits from Torkoal, so he can get her all the way down into the red, but with the combination of paralysis from Body Slam and Attract, it's unlikely that he'll be able to close out the battle. I switched to Arkansas, who unfortunately falls to a body slam. I was hoping she might survive, but alas. Her death does give Nevada a free switch-in though, but I forgot that she's completely out of BP after a training stint. I'm really trying my hardest to throw here, I guess. Fortunately, Michigan can come back in on an overheat, barely survive a body slam on the next turn, and kill Torkoal with a bubble beam, but yeah, that was a pretty sloppy-ass victory. We're gonna really need to focus up if I want to avoid wiping to Norman for a second time. At the very least, I have a better plan. It starts by prepping Kansas for the box. She's out of Wish PP, but can still be useful later, so I don't want to fully retire her. Teaching her a few TMs means that she's box ready and destined to return soon enough. Nevada, on the other hand, is simply permanently retired so that I can make room for yet another teammate. That means that we're ready for round 2 against Norman. Once again, I lead with New York the Spinda. We're a little weaker this time around, so a return doesn't put Norman Spinda into healing range, and he also opts to just go for damage with Facade instead of whiffing a Teeter Dance. But either way, New York is victorious, and Slacking comes out second. Like last time, I switched to Montana, this time on a Facade, but instead of staying in, I now swap out to Wyoming on Slacking's loafing turn. Wyoming learns Protect by Level Up and Toxic by TM, so with the right sequencing, Slacking can't do a damn thing. Oh, and in case it's not clear, when my team got auto-healed after the Slateport City Team Aqua fight, I boxed Wyoming until now. Hence why I was able to use him for Brawly and this battle without any issue. Anyways, with Slacking down, things are looking much better. Vigoroth is no match for a combination of Rock Throw from Montana and Revenge from Alabama. That just leaves Lanoon, who tries to set up a belly drum before going down to a follow-up Vital Throw. Just like that, we've beaten Norman and gotten our furthest attempt yet. This means that I finally get access to Surf, which really opens up the rest of Hoenn and grants me access to a bunch of new encounters. I catch a Goldeen from Petalburg City, a Wingull from Route 105, an Adamant Voltorb from New Mauville, a Whalmer from Route 109, a Carvana from Route 118, and an Oddish from Route 119. After clearing through Team Aqua at the Weather Institute, I decide to permanently retire Michigan the Azumarill and Alabama the Machoke. They've served me well, but it's time to make room for some new blood. As we head into the battle against May on Route 119, that's Georgia the Sea King and California the Pelipper. The former takes care of May's lead Pelipper with a few secret powers. Wisconsin comes in to deal with Lombre without taking too much damage, and then Georgia comes back in to deal with Combusken. Pretty easy stuff. On the other side of Fortree City, I get the guaranteed Kecleon using the Devon Scope. This guy has the potential to be useful a little bit later. As we prepare for the fight against Winona, poor Wyoming falls against a random trainer's Whalmer. Honestly, he was going to get retired anyway, but even though I'm not supposed to be emotional in this challenge, it feels way worse to watch him die. Nevertheless, with Ohio the Electrode now on the team, we're looking pretty good for the fight against Winona. I lead with California, who uses the Ice Beam TM from the abandoned ship to hit Winona's lead Swablu hard. It doesn't actually kill her, which is pretty concerning, but at least it burns one of Winona's Hyper Potions. 2 Surfs get the KO, and Tropius comes in second. At the very least, she cleanly goes down to a single Ice Beam. Winona's Pelipper is third, so for the mirror, we take her out in one shot with a Shockwave tech. Skarmory is fourth and outspeeds, so she gets off a decent amount of damage with a few aerial aces before we can take her out with 2 Surfs. So as Altaria comes in last, California is sitting at 31 HP. Since Altaria likes to go for Dragon Dance turn 1, I stay in. My heart drops as a Dragon Breath comes out, but California manages to hang on with 5 HP, letting her take the KO with a single Ice Beam. Honestly, a crit or a full paralysis there would have been really bad, but somehow we pulled through and badge number 6 is ours. With that, we've made it to Lily Cove City, which gives me access to the most important training resource since the Daycare Center all the way back in Mauville City, namely the Move Deleter. The reason this amnesiac old man is so important is that deleting moves means that I effectively have unlimited PP on every HM move, most notably Surf. Whenever we run out of PP, I simply delete the move at the Move Deleter's house and use the HM to relearn it. This means that I can now freely train up against low-level Pokemon without worrying about running out of PP or taking damage. And if those low-level Pokemon just so happen to be Numels, well, the special attack EVs certainly won't hurt. I can also theoretically do this with level up moves, though that will require giving a heart scale to the move relearner. Currently, heart scales are still in pretty short supply, but for now, unlimited surfs are more than enough for California the Pelipper to plow through all the Team Magma and Aqua crap. California also learned Stockpile and Swallow, which is why she's back to full HP after the battle against Winona. And speaking of getting back to full HP, I can also get the TM for Rest from a rather round man in Lily Cove City. I can only use it on one Pokemon, so I make sure to use it on someone who really needs it. Wisconsin. He's been suffering from paralysis for too long, but after fishing up a harmless Magikarp, we can finally cure him of his debilitating status condition. Okay, so apparently Rest doesn't work at full HP. That was a waste. But after Wisconsin takes a bit of damage, we can fish up another Magikarp and then cure him of his debilitating status condition. Healthcare is for suckers. All you need is a good nap. At some point during this leg of the journey, I made the decision to retire Montana the Graveler and Georgia the Sea King. Their absences opened up room for Massachusetts the Sharpedo and Kentucky the Crobat. The latter is just used as a flyer right now, so I don't have to waste a move slot on California. By the time we get to Tate and Liza, Kentucky hasn't seen a second of combat, and it'll stay that way as the coastal duo of California and Mass slice and dice their way through Tate and Liza's 4 Pokemon. A double-up Surf is enough to KO the Claydol and do heavy damage to Xatu. Once Lunatone comes in, Xatu sets up a sunny day. But it doesn't matter at this point, because a Crunch from Mass kills Lunatone, and after Solrock comes in, one of California's final Ice Beam PPs takes out Xatu. Then Solrock dies to a second Crunch, and victory is ours. As the climactic showdown between Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza unfolds, it's time to start making our final preparations for the endgame, including retiring New York the Spinda. He's been hanging on by a thread for quite some time, but it's still sad to see him go. With the open team slot, however, I can welcome Kansas the Illumise back onto the team. And by heading to the move relearner in Arbor Town, she relearns Wish, which can be used to give my entire team a refresh. Seriously, Kansas really clutched up the latter half of this challenge. And since my team is slowly running out of PP, I can also teach Mass the TM for Thief, so that we can start farming heart scales from Wild Love Disc. It only has 10 PP, but since Love Discs have a 50% chance of holding a heart scale, and there are a few hidden in the overworld, by the time Mass is out of PP, we have 8 heart scales, which should be more than enough. And even if it's not, remember that Kecleon I got? Well, he can learn Thief by level up, so with the move relearner, it's pretty trivial to get as many heart scales as I need. Anyways, with our team's trip to Kansas's rejuvenation spa complete, it's time for her to go back into the box with her PP fully restored via some move deleter and TM shenanigans. That means that we can bring out Alaska the Spheal, who I caught from Shoal Cave, in time for the fight against the 8th and final gym leader Juan. But he's not the only one joining the squad. Replacing Kentucky the Crobat as my lead for the battle is a familiar face. Arizona the Sceptile. He's had some work done, but underneath it all, he's the same little gecko that's been with us since the beginning of the challenge. With his new move Leaf Blade, he's able to gut Juan's water types like the floppy fish they are. The only wild card is Kingdra, who takes neutral damage from grass type attacks and uses the opportunity to set up a double team. So a miss here could spell trouble. But Arizona didn't spend days in the box just to throw away his shot. A second Leaf Blade connects and Kingdra falls. Juan's final 2 Pokemon go down to Leaf Blades as well, so just like that, we've beaten the last gym leader of the playthrough. Which means that it's time for the final challenge of the run. The fights against the Elite Four and the Champion. It takes a great deal of prep, starting first with the retiring of California the Pelipper. She doesn't do anything that Mass and Alaska don't do better, and opening up her team slot lets me bring Kansas out for one final blessing via a few wishes. With that, Kansas's job is done, at long last getting to join her fellow friends in retirement. We won't be able to heal between the fights, but thanks to Kansas, my team can at least walk through the doors of the Pokemon League, happy and at full HP. Here's the final team leveled up to the level cap of 55 to match Drake's Salamence. Replacing Kansas is Kentucky the Crobat. Other than that, it's the same usual suspects. So, let's see if they've got what it takes to bring this challenge home. First up is Sydney, who as usual is a walk in the park. Mightyena gets crushed by a Mystic Water boosted Surf from Mass, Cacturne and Shiftry both go down to a single Ice Beam, Crawdonk goes down to a Giga Drain from Arizona, who gets back to full HP after tanking a Strength, and finally Absol falls to a single Leaf Blade. So far, so good. Phoebe and her ghost types are second, but not a single one doesn't go down to a Crunch from Massachusetts. Well, that's actually not true. Sableye goes down to a Surf since that's the stronger choice given her secondary dark typing, but everyone else gets the Amity Island special, and the battle is won in just under 2 minutes. Glacia is third, and here's where, ironically, things start to heat up. Wisconsin is able to one-shot Glacia's lead Celio with a super effective Brick Break, but her first Glalie outspeeds and hits a pretty hard Ice Beam before going down. Celio number 2 is also outsped and falls to a Brick Break, but as you might expect, Glalie number 2 once again outspeeds. She just sets up Hail though, so a 4th Brick Break gets a 4th kill. But now it's time to deal with Wall Rain, and the Hail Chip is not helping. She outspeeds to land a nasty Ice Beam before Brick Break comes out, and leaves her with the smallest of slivers. A Citrus Berry isn't enough to get her out of healing range, so I stay in to bring her back down to red after Glacia goes for a full restore. The same thing happens a second time since high rolls are a myth. With Glacia done healing, I switch out to Alaska. I'm terrified to see him take a body slam, but by the grace of Arceus, it does not paralyze. So one Surf is enough to finish off Glacia's ace and win us the battle. That means that we're at the final member of the Elite Four, Drake. His dragon types are spooky, but with 2 Ice Beam spammers, I'm hoping things are fine. An Ice Beam from Mask gets the one-shot against Shelgon and Altaria. Third is Kingdra, and this one's a Dragon Dance variant, so for the first turn I stay in and hit a hard Crunch, which does over 50% and gets the special defense drop. Luck's on our side. I stay in as Kingdra outspeeds to hit a Smokescreen, which causes Mask to miss her second Crunch. Luck is a fickle thing, I guess. I decide to switch to Alaska on a Body Slam, which mercifully again does not paralyze. Then Drake gets greedy with a second Dragon Dance, so an Ice Beam gets the KO before things get out of hand. Well, kinda. Because next is Salamence, and since this guy knows Rock Slide, it's not safe to stay in here. But it's also not particularly safe to switch out into the glass cannon that is Mass, so I make the call to sacrifice Wisconsin for a safe switch. She comes in on a Rock Slide and actually survives the hit. This lets her get off a Fake Out for some cheeky chip damage, but then her time's up. Another Rock Slide kills my 6th team member. But the sacrifice was a good one, because Mask can now come in and one-shot Salamence, as well as the far superior Dragon-type Flygon, with one shot apiece, winning us the last battle of the Elite Four. But with just 5 Pokemon left, some of which have already taken some damage, we're gonna need to fight tooth and nail against Wallace if we want to win this challenge. For a Mono-type champion, he can be deceptively tricky, and I think we're gonna need to make some sacrifices. He leads with Wailord, and I lead with Arizona. It's a bit of a gamble, but I just go for the Leaf Blade, hoping it's enough for a KO. Luckily it is, and Arizona isn't met with a nasty blizzard. Wallace then goes straight for the big guns. His Ace Milotic comes in, threatening with Ice Beam, but I have to hope Arizona's tough enough to survive one hit, because Leaf Blade is nowhere close to a one-shot on this specially defensive tank. Ice Beam comes out, and Arizona lives. Comfortably, too. Even after Citrus Berry recovery, a second Leaf Blade is enough to snipe down Milotic, bringing Tentacruel out third. And now things get a little sketchy. Ohio is my primary answer into this thing, but with an adamant nature, Thunderbolt's absolutely not getting the KO, and I don't trust them to survive 2 hits, so I first switch to Mass on an Ice Beam. She can do decent damage with Crunch, as Tentacruel bizarrely just goes for Toxic. A Strength on the following turn brings Tentacruel into the yellow, as a Sludge Bomb in retaliation brings Mass into the red, and then Toxic damage leaves her with 3 HP. This means that she can of course take the KO on Tentacruel with another Strength, but as Wallace's Ludicolo comes in 4th, Mass goes down to poison damage. Rest well, buddy, you did great. This gives me a safe switch to Kentucky, whose sole purpose for being on the team is to snipe off this Ludicolo with a Sludge Bomb. She doesn't quite get the one-shot, but a poison followed by a lucky dodge from Leech Seed means that Ludicolo falls at the end of the turn. Whiscash comes in 5th, which means I gotta try to get back into Arizona. Unfortunately, I'm not confident he'll survive a potential crit, so I just go for Aerial Ace, hoping for Whiscash to take Kentucky out to give me a safe switch. Instead, he sets up an Amnesia, which was pretty dumb on my end. After seeing that Whiscash is just going for Limp Surfs, I decide to make the switch to Arizona anyways. I almost have a heart attack as a critical hit Surf leaves him with just 5 hit points. But that's 4 more than we need. An Overgrow boosted Leaf Blade easily takes out Whiscash, leaving Wallace with his final Pokemon, Gyarados. An Overgrow boosted Leaf Blade hits the Flying Fish for massive damage, but it's simply not enough, and Arizona falls to a Surf. With 3 Pokemon down and 3 Pokemon left, it all comes down to this. Wallace's Gyarados is holding 2 Wakan berries to quadruple reduce the power of electric-type moves, so there's really only one thing left to do. Only one way forward. With a heavy heart, I bring out Ohio. Tears blurring my vision, I stand tall and salute Ohio as he prepares to make the ultimate sacrifice. He turns to give me a look that I've come to know all too well after years of Nuzlocking my way through the hardest of challenges. It's a look that says, I know what I must do. I know this is the only way. I know what I'm dying for, and that's okay. My heart breaks as Ohio willingly explodes into a dazzling and colorful spectacle of shrapnel that tears through Gyarados' scaly body. It's a tragedy to lose such a beloved teammate, but it was the only way to ensure victory. If there was any other way, I would have done it. But on the shoulders of Ohio's noble, volitional, and necessary sacrifice, Gyarados is defeated, winning us not just the battle, but the entire run. Well, there you have it. A hardcore Nuzlocke completed without ever using a Pokemon Center or a single healing item. I have to say, it was a blast to figure out this challenge and learn how to use the game's resources to work around the rules I set for myself at the beginning of the playthrough. I really hope this was a fun one to watch because I do know it was a bit different than my usual challenges. Even if it wasn't, thanks so much for watching, especially up until this point. If you did enjoy watching, it'd be great if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel. Or don't, I don't know. But I do know that you should follow me on Twitter and Twitch to keep up with streams of my future ROM hack challenges. You should also subscribe to my highlights channel to get highlights of the challenge I'm currently streaming before it's cut down to a video on the main channel. Ever wanted to see a version of Pokemon X and Y that's actually difficult? Well, then check out the highlights channel. And you should also consider subscribing to my Patreon or becoming a channel member on YouTube, which are the best ways to directly support the channel. The links to everything are in the description down below. Stay tuned for more Nuzlocke videos, and until then, remember to always, always, always play around the critical hit.